Hi everyone. So I've had some technical difficulties and this will be the fourth time I am recording this, so I apologize if I get a little brief as I'm afraid I might lose some of the details I put in the first time. Today I'll be doing a lesson for fourth graders about The Giver. I know that The Giver is a little more advanced as far as vocabulary and content, but I think it'd be a nice challenge for fourth graders, maybe going into fifth grade soon, and would be a great way to use questioning as a literary strategy. So before we start, we're going to talk about why using questioning is good for learning while we're reading. So we'll talk about why questions is the way to go for this. So when I'm reading something new, do I have a whole bunch of background knowledge about maybe what kind of book it is or what's happening in the book already? Not always, right? Sometimes I have to start from fresh right as I'm starting the book. And I have to use questions throughout the book, or I can use questions throughout the book to keep myself engaged in the content, meaning I'm still thinking about all the things that are kind of off, or maybe just things that the author has left me to ponder, to wonder, to inquire about. So we're going to use questions today to help us figure out what we don't know about the book yet and to keep us wondering, what is going to be answered soon, what is answered right in the time that we're reading, or what maybe never gets answered. And sometimes in books we have big questions that don't get answered. So this is a great way to keep track of our thinking throughout the book. Because sometimes you'll look back at the end of a book and think, well, I got the answers to all those questions. So we're going to use questions today to start off our book. So I apologize as I've been fixing my whiteboard here. To model our thinking, to model using questioning, I'll read a few pages from our beginning, and I'll pause and show you where I stop and think, this is kind of strange. I have a question here, this isn't explained yet. In this, you'll find this happens a lot in this book. The first few chapters are going to leave you with a lot of questions and make you wonder what on earth is going on in this book. So I'll be using a whiteboard here with plenty of room for all my questions, and a little column here for all the new words that I run into, because we don't want to overlook all of our new words. We want to find out either what they mean from their context or the words and ideas surrounding it, or we want to look it up when we're done reading so that we learn something new. So I will start by reading from The Giver for a few pages, and I'll show you when I stop and I'm thinking about all the strange things that are happening maybe, or things I haven't thought of, or things that are just very different from how we do it. And that makes me wonder what kind of book this is going to be. So, here we start. We're reading The Giver by Lois Lowry, a classic. Chapter 1. It was almost December, and Jonas was beginning to be frightened. First sentence, and I'm already intrigued. I'm curious, I'm interested. Jonas was beginning to be frightened. No, wrong word, Jonas thought. Frightened meant that deep, sickening feeling of something terrible about to happen. Frightened was the way he felt a year ago when an unidentified aircraft had overflown the community twice. Well, I'm going to stop here definitely and think. First of all, does overflown mean flew over? It does, but that's a good word to write down because that's something that we haven't come across, has it? Or is it? I'm sorry. Overflown. It is answered because we can kind of infer its meaning. So anything that gets answered, we're going to put a little A next to so that when we're reading later in the book, we can go back and know what questions haven't been answered yet, what is still lingering, what we still need to figure out. So I'm also going to ask a question. Why is an aircraft or a plane flying overhead so frightening? Why is a plane so frightening? We've seen planes flying over us, and I've never been afraid. Maybe you have. Maybe it can be a little scary, but does it sound like something that would be frightening? Something that we'd stop what we were doing because we were so frightened? I don't know. So, he had seen it both times. See how I went back and I kind of lost my train of thought? When you're questioning, sometimes it's easy to do that. And if you do that, just go back a sentence or two and you can catch right back up. Frightened was the way he had felt a year ago when an unidentified aircraft had overflown the community twice. He had seen it both times, squinting towards the sky. He had seen the sleek jet, almost a blur at its high speed, go past, and a second later heard the blast of sound that followed. Then one more time, a moment later, from the opposite direction, the same plane. At first, he had been only fascinated. What does it mean to be fascinated? Well, I'm kind of guessing that, well, actually, you know what? Let's read further and see if we can answer that without having to write it down. He had never seen aircraft so close, for it was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. To me, it sounds like fascinated probably means interested or intrigued. But I have another question just from that sentence. It was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. Against what rules? Is that like their law? So I'm wondering, are the rules their laws? Because I don't know what kind of place or time I'm even in yet, right? Are the rules the laws? Because here, at school, you have rules, but in life, there are laws about what's right and wrong in society, right? It's a law to not steal. So I'm curious if that's what that means, if it's against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. Occasionally, when supplies were delivered by cargo planes to the landing field across the river, the children rode their bikes to the riverbank and watched, intrigued, the unloading and then the takeoff directed to the west, always away from the community. But the aircraft a year ago had been different. It was not a squat, fat-bellied cargo plane, but a needle-nosed, single-pilot jet. Jonas, looking around anxiously, had seen others. Adults as well as children stop what they were doing and wait, confused, for an explanation of the frightening event. Excuse me. Why is it so frightening for this plane to be flying over the community? Now, this is already a question that was asked earlier, but now it looks like it's getting a little more in depth. Why is it so scary for this plane? All of the citizens had been ordered to go into the nearest building and stay there. Immediately, the rasping voice through the speaker had said, "Leave your bicycles where they are." Why are there speakers telling everyone what to do? That seems a little crazy to me, doesn't it? I mean, sometimes there are speakers at school, but what if you went out into the world and you were just walking on the sidewalk and you heard someone talking over the speakers that said, "Hey, your shoe's untied. You have to tie your shoe right now." Wouldn't that be kind of scary? So why are there speakers ordering us what to do? Or ordering them? Or are there speakers ordering people in the book? So that's different than what we have going on in our life. So this seems like maybe it's probably not a realistic fiction book. That's something that we can infer because of the differences that we found already. So instantly, obediently, that sounds like a new word. Before I even finish my sentence, I want to write that down. If he did something instantly and he listened to directions quickly and obediently, then what can we we can make another inference about what this might mean from the context. So if he's doing something instantly, obediently. Do you think that's probably another way to say fast, or maybe another way to say that he was following the rules? Chit chat with the kids. It's a way of it's someone who follows the rules is acting obediently. So we're going to say that that is answered as well. We're going to put another A by it. None of our questions have been answered yet. Instantly, obediently, Jonas had dropped his bike on its side on the path behind his family's dwelling. His family's dwelling. I'm going to write down dwelling in my new words. That seems a little different than something that I would say. If I dropped my bike behind something, my family's something, wouldn't that usually be your house? Or even your garage, or something that your family has or lives in? Well, that's what a dwelling is. That's another word that we can kind of figure out the meaning from the words and ideas around it. So a dwelling is a house or where someone lives. So we're going to mark that as answered as well. That's the great thing about new words, that a lot of times if we really think about the words and ideas around it, we can usually figure out what it means. So he dropped his bike on its side on the path behind his family's dwelling. He had run indoors and stayed there alone. His parents were both at work, and his little sister, Lily, was at the child care center where she spent her after-school hours. Looking through the front window, he had seen no people. None of the busy afternoon crew of street cleaners, landscape workers, and food delivery people who usually populated the community at that time of day. He saw only the abandoned bikes here and there on their sides. An upturned wheel on one was still revolving slowly. So I know just from those first few pages that I have questions. I'm going to have some new words, some new vocabulary in this book, and that I'm already intrigued about what's going to keep happening in this book. That's a great thing about questions, is that we really stop and think about all the things that might not be answered, or things that we want answered. We want to race to that answer. So we're going to take this time now. I'm going to hand out graphic organizers that look just like this. We're going to have easy peasy, 2 columns, our questions, and our new words. We're going to work with partners. For partners, I try to assign some of the high readers, some of the low readers, just to skip over fluency and go right to comprehension with content. So I'll have students pair up, and we'll read the next few pages together and use the questioning, the model that we just did together, to write down all the questions that come up, all the new words that we find that we're maybe not sure about, or even if they're answered right after. If we stop and write down what we are unfamiliar with, that also show us what we've already learned. So we'll fill out this graphic organizer together, and we'll come together, all of us after, and talk about what it is, or what questions we found, maybe what got answered, what's still not answered, and what questions all of your reading made you come up with. So we'll meet together after and go over.